Hi everyone. Hello, I'm Claire from Cult Pens. Thank you very much for joining us all. I'm delighted to welcome you all to our first Cult Pens live event in partnership with the fantastic team at Derwent and the equally fantastic Judith Selcuk, who is leading the workshop today. Before I hand over to Judith, a couple of points of admin just to mention. We're expecting the session to last about an hour, just over, so please make yourselves comfortable. All cameras and audio are switched off, but if you do have any questions, if you can use there's a Q&A function that you should see at the bottom of the screen. So if you click in there, then Lisa and Kate from Derwent and also Helen from Cult Pens are on hand to answer all your questions. The workshop is being recorded, so if you do miss anything, and I'm sure Judith will give you plenty of time as we go through anyway, but if you do miss something, you will be able to find the video session on YouTube later this week. So without further ado, I will hand over to Judith to start our session. Over to you, Judith.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Judith Selcuk. Thank you for joining me on this Valentine's card making workshop with Cult Pens and Derwent. I hope you have a fun time. We're going to explore the different qualities of the Derwent pencils as we create a unique bespoke card together. You will have received a materials list, but don't worry if you don't have the exact pencils on the list, because what I will do is I will talk you through it, and I can talk you through colour matches, what I would use and what I would suggest. So we're going to begin without further ado, and we're going to get on with the workshop, because I'm going to take you through a whole load of different techniques and different things. I'm going to blind you with loads of different facts. If I go too fast for you, this will be on Cult Pens YouTube channel as early as they can possibly do it. Please do give them some time to get it up there, because everything takes a bit of time. But if it goes too fast, don't worry, because you'll be able to get it on catch up. And you can always email them, they will contact me and I will help you through anything. It's not a problem. So we're going to change over to the workshop camera. So there'll be a little bit of camera travel as that happens. So you might want to look away for a split second. The reason why I use Lightfast paper, you can use any Bristol paper as well, is we like to use a smooth surface because pencils work better on a smooth surface. If you use a really rough paper, it's really hard to get a really beautiful finish. So the paper I'm using today is Derwent Lightfast paper. There you go. Now that was a bit of a gremlin. We always have some technical gremlins. There's always something. This was the camera angles today. So the paper I'm using tonight is Derwent's Lightfast paper. The reason why I chose this one is this is a hot press paper. Now you may not have heard of what hot press is. Hot press paper is like ironing your clothes. So you have a shirt, and the difference between hot press and cold press paper is if you don't iron it, it's cold press and it's still bobbly. If it's hot press, we've got a hot iron over it and it's nice and smooth. So tonight we're going to be using hot press paper. I've simply, to make a card, I've taken a sheet of A4 paper and I've folded it in half. To make a nice edge, pinch it in half, take a ruler and run your ruler along the seam. If you've already got cardstock, then by all means use cardstock. You can get watercolour cardstock, but it just shows you that you don't have to have cardstock, so you don't have to have ready-made cards to make decent gift cards. You can use watercolour paper, or you can use Bristol paper, you can use heavyweight cartridge paper. This is what you call 300 GSM. That means it's 300 grams per square meter, which is a really good heavyweight paper. Now, what you'll see on when you looked at the image of our workshop is you will see when making a Valentine's card, that's like a jeweled heart and it's split into lines. So I asked you to bring a ruler with you. With your ruler and just a regular drawing pencil, mine's a bit gnarled now after I chew it a lot. Don't chew your pencil, it's not good for you. Hold your ruler across here. Now this doesn't have to be exact, you don't have to follow my lines. And just draw across. Let me do that harder so you can see. Now I'm pressing harder so you can see on the camera. At home, if you do it nice and light. Another point to make is on this seam side, where you're going to open your card. Okay, what you need to do is overlap it. So when you cut it, you're going to have a hinge. If you have it round here, when you cut it, it will just fall apart. So you need to almost overlap it slightly so you're creating a hinge. Then a little bit further down, take your ruler, hold it in the middle so your fingers aren't in the way. And again, I'm pressing harder than you need to. Draw your line across. Okay. And then we're going to draw our lines down. The first one we're going to draw down is from the central point of the heart. Again, don't worry if I go too fast. You can catch up as I'm getting pencils out and talking. Let's go for halfway down this side. It's a bit like dot to dot. We can put markers on to help ourselves know where we're going. So we're going to join that up. We're going to use this cross point here and we can go halfway along here and we're going to join these two up. Should we go a little bit further across? I think it'd be a bit better further across. Not much, just a little. There, I think that's better. So if you make a mistake with graphite, just a good polymer eraser or a vinyl eraser, you can just lift it out and just put in any lines you erase. Join these points up. So where you've made a cross here to this corner. Again, if I go too fast, don't worry. You can catch up. I'll hold it still whilst I talk so you can just match up any lines. Make a mark a third away down this long stripe here. And we're going to join up this one from this section. We're going to make a diamond there. And then we're going to make a diamond by joining up here. So we're making the facets of a jewel. And then just join it anywhere up into the line above. So we're making nice facets of a jewel. Find your halfway mark on this line here. And we're going to join up all these points. Again, it doesn't matter if it's not exactly the same. It doesn't matter if you've made yours up. it's like creating a diamond with all these different sections. And all these different sections are going to have a different colour in them. So in some ways, it's nice if yours is bespoke. You don't want them all the same. You can continue that line down. So this line I've just drawn in here, I'm going to continue it down all the way there. So you can make yours up. So if you wanted to do a few different cards, you could make all your cards different and all your facets different. Okay, so let me hold this in place whilst I talk you through what we're going to do next. Eventually, we'll cut this heart out. So make sure you've left this seam, this hinge here. We don't cut it out until the paper is bone dry, because what it will do is it will go what we call cockled, which is wobbly. And we want to make sure the paper is nice and flat. Now, what you might find is now you've drawn that, you might find it easier if you work on it flattened out. Just because it's a card doesn't mean you have to work on it folded up as a card. Once you've got it together, you might find it easier to open it out and work on it flat. I certainly do. I find it a lot easier to work on it flat. Okay, so you can take a look, but by all means, if yours doesn't match mine perfectly, it really doesn't matter. Now I'm right-handed. So because I'm right-handed, I work left to right. A lot of my students are left-handed, so I ask them to work right to left. But on this workshop, we're going to start on this top section here, and we're going to work down. What that means is we're going to avoid getting pencil on our hand, and we're going to avoid smudging it. So if we work just from the top and work down, we're going to avoid smudging all the pencil on our hands. The first pencil I'm going to ask you to use is the Derwent Metallic Rose Gold. I love the Rose Gold pencil. The Derwent Metallic are a contemporary metallic set of pencils. They really are contemporary metallic colours. And on black paper they shine, and on white paper they shimmer. They do work better sharp, but I don't give them a long point because they really are quite a soft core inside. I use one of these little pencil sharpeners with my metallic pencils. Just a regular standard little pencil sharpener does the trick with these. And when you're sharpening, best way to sharpen a pencil, hold it firm in your hands. And this may sound like I'm making you suck eggs. Certainly not the intention. What it is quite often we put too much pressure down on our pencils, and that's what snaps the core. Just turn it ever so slowly and hold your pencil sharpener still. And that way you put less pressure on that core and to stop it breaking. A lot of the time when I snap the core in pencils, it's my error, and it's because I'm pushing down too much actually on the pencil in the pencil sharpener. When I use a pencil, I don't hold it at this end, I hold it here, and that gives me more control. Draw around this top edge. Just steady the camera. And then just shade in lightly. We keep our strokes really close together. And we take our time. We don't rush it. If we rush with metallics, you can get streaks. So we try not to rush with metallics. It's definitely worth taking your time. And you'll see that I rotate my pencil every centimetre or so. I just give it a little turn. Because metallics are a hexagonal pencil, It's much easier to rotate the pencil in your hand and just give it a little turn. And what that does is it makes sure and ensure I'm using the sharpest point of the pencil at all times. And it means that the shading is more consistent, my shading is smoother, and my shading is flatter. Then you can just go around and get into all the little smooth bits here. And you can make bits darker and give it a bit of more of a three-dimensional effect. And just make sure all your strokes are really nice and smooth. And we don't want to spend too long on that bit. Just get it in. But metallics on white paper shimmer. And pop that pencil away. The next colour I'm picking up is the Coloursoft Pink. Derwent's Coloursoft Pink. It's a really soft, gentle colour. Now, Coloursoft can be tricky to sharpen because, again, they are a softer core. So just take your time in your sharpener. They're a round pencil, so take it out, have a check. We're just going to put a light layer on this one, and we're going to go for this section here. Coloursoft lay down really smooth, quickly, with large areas of colour. You'll feel a difference with these. They feel almost chalkier. They're very much like shading with a pastel pencil, but in colour pencil format. And you can shade down large areas really quickly and really smooth. And there's no dust. Make sure you get right up to this edge. And look how quick we can lay that colour down. It's tempting to keep going over it and over it and over it, but we don't want to do that because we don't want to just make everything look the same vibrancy and flat. Pop that pencil away. Now, one of the things we asked you to do was to make sure you had a water brush with you, because the next one we're going to go for is Derwent Inktense. Now, whilst you may be catching up and giving it a little bit of a sharpen, because just because it's ink, you still have to have a sharp pencil. Okay, again, nifty little sharpener. Derwent Inktense. I'm just going to hold it there while you catch up with me. So Derwent Inktense are ink pencils. They're not watercolour. Contrary to popular belief, they are not a watercolour pencil. They are ink pencils. It's dried ink in a pencil format. When they are being wetted out and when the pigment has been completely dissolved and then they are dry, they become permanent. So what we're going to do is they become very vibrant when they've been wetted out. They are a little more fragile. So just ease back on your pressure slightly. If you get these little grains, don't be tempted to brush them away with your finger. Resist temptation. And now that is super hard. I completely understand that, but resist temptation. Lay down a very light layer of colour. You don't need a heavy layer, and I will show you why. Get right up to the edges. You can use Inktense pencils on paper, fabric, any absorbent surface. So I've used them on wood panels, anything like that. You can layer them and layer them and layer them. You can mix the colours. And as soon as they have been wetted out and allowed to dry, they are permanent. If the colour is shifting, it's because you haven't wet them out enough. Okay, so that's a really light layer. The difference is now I want you to blow any bits away. Don't sweep them with your hand. Then take your water brush. With your water brush, you will see how vibrant they suddenly become. So what I'm now doing is I'm now breaking down the binder in the pencil, which is wax, soluble wax, and dissolving it and turning it into ink. And when this is dry, you could go over it again and again and again. There's no limit to how many times you can go over it. Okay, we want to leave that now and let it dry. It will dry flatter than it looks on the screen. Let's move on to this section here. This one, we're going to use Inktense Fuchsia. So give it a quick sharpen. Again, sharpen it gently. Give this a really light coating. Excuse me. When you're drawing a curve, keep your hand on the paper and just draw around. Your hand then acts as the anchor, and it's easier to get a better curve. And just add a light layer. You don't have to be as fussy about keeping your shading as flat, but it's good practice too. So if you had Inktense pencils, just Inktense pencils, you could recreate this heart on a tote bag or a t-shirt. Pop the pencil away, and then let's wet this out. To clean your brush in between colours, just wipe it on a bit of kitchen roll. Don't worry if your bristles become stained with water brushes when you're using Inktense. There's so much pigment in Inktense that the bristles become naturally stained. It's not that the bristles are dirty, it's just because it's so pigmented. Okay, so whilst that's drying, let's move on to, let's add in here. This is the Inktense Deep Rose. Let's draw in next to it and shade it in. So we had fuchsia here, and we're going to put deep rose in next to it. And we're going to put quite a harsh layer in, quite a heavy layer. I want to show you the difference between a light layer and a heavier layer. So the pressure I'm using is what I would use to write with.
Judith,
Yes.
we've had a question in asking whether you can shade with different Inktense colours before applying the water.
Yes, you can. You just have to make sure you you clean your brush in between. By all means, yes, you can. The only other thing you have to be careful of is colour transference on your hand, because there's still a wax-based pencil. So it's really easy to smudge. So what I would do is put a piece of paper under my hand and I'd lean on it, just like I would with colour pencil, because there is wax on them. If you're anything like me, which is quite heavy-handed, I do tend to smudge my pencil all over the place. So by all means, put your pencils down and then just blend them colour by colour, but clean your brush in between. That's a nice way of doing it. So you can see by doing a heavier layer, even though it's the same pencil, you get a different colour, a different tone, so a different depth of colour. And then just wash your brush off in between, or wipe it off on a piece of kitchen roll. The next pencil I want you to get out is a Lightfast pencil. This is Lightfast Strawberry. Lightfast are one of my favourite pencils. They are Derwent's only oil-based pencil. They are a lot softer to use, very creamy to use. They need a little bit of care. Don't push hard with them, because what they will do is you'll shear them off and they will go pinging across the room. Don't push so hard. They are best worked in layers rather than pushing away and trying to get the colour down too quick. They are better if you apply them in layers. They are Lightfast for up to 100 years. So if you are a colour pencil artist and want to create a legacy or create a piece of artwork that is going to last you a lifetime, they are definitely worth investing in and definitely worth, you know, adding into your toolkit. They're a beautiful pencil to use. They go on smooth. They're a painterly pencil. Okay, and that's quick. And they're so quick to use. Pop that away. This section here, let's put in Coloursoft Bright Pink. Now, Coloursoft Bright Pink is a lovely, pretty colour. But again, let's give it a sharpen. Again, Coloursoft. Take your time with them. Rotate it in your fingers. If you do get a breakage with Derwent pencils are glued throughout the pencil. So just carry on sharpening till the next point of glue and you won't lose the whole of your pencil. Okay, so just shade this section lightly. This is a lovely pink. You could vary it, so we could start off darker here, and then we can ease off on the pressure as you go further in. There's lots of different ways we can shade this section, but let's do it that way. So we're going to ease off the pressure as we get further in, and then we're going to increase the pressure as we get further out. And get right up to this edge. You'll feel the difference in these pencils after using the Lightfast pencils. You'll go back to feeling that they're almost a drier pencil. Go right up to the edges. What you don't want is white joins. If you have a white join, it's almost like a halo, but right up to it. You can darken this edge by going over it in an opposite direction. I find Coloursoft so easy to blend. My problem is knowing when to stop, because I could just keep going and going and keep going. So it's knowing at that point when to stop. Because the Lightfast paper will just take so many layers. It is knowing when I want to stop. So I'm going to stop at that point. Pick up your Lightfast strawberry. Now what you can do as another tip is just remove your graphite line in between. I have mine quite dark, so yours should almost disappear. You don't want that to always be very predominant and show. Lightfast, you don't always have to sharpen. It's one of the unique things about this pencil. Normally with colour pencils, you always have to sharpen them, and they always work best at their sharpest. For some reason, Lightfast is the exception, and it doesn't have to be perfectly sharp all the time to get a lovely smooth blend. It's a unique enigma, this pencil. It's beautiful. So put a lovely layer of the Lightfast strawberry. You might want to vary your strokes so they're not all going in one direction.
Just to let you know, Judith, we're just beyond the half-an-hour point.
Thank you. Get right up to your join. There we go. See, I go quiet and I could just carry on and carry on and get in my own world of shading. Pop that one away. Let's go for a metallic. We haven't had a metallic for a while. Make sure the metallic's nice and sharp. The metallic does need to be sharp. Even if it's just only a half turn in your sharpener, it's best sharp. We're going to add a really light layer. We don't want it to be as dark as the last section. When you tilt it in the light, you will see the reflective qualities and it will shimmer. So it's almost a barely there stroke. Get right into the corners. And you can remove your graphite as you work. I won't remove mine so you don't lose track of where you are, but it's best if you can remove your graphite as you work. You can use a precision eraser, such as the Derwent USB eraser, or you can use any finer eraser. Let's get some Inktense on here. Okay, so let's give this is Derwent, this is the Inktense Fuchsia. And you can see by working on the card open, you're not constantly having to hold it down and you're not constantly having to push at it. You still need to get up to the edges on your diamond so you have an even coating of ink. Let's wet that. The Derwent water brushes, even on the regular ones within the Inktense set, you don't need to squeeze them. So these ones that you get with your Inktense set, you don't need to squeeze them. There's a valve system inside them that means that works on a pressure system, where the more pressure you put on the bristles, that's when the water comes out. With the push button water brushes, you only have to squeeze them if you want to do a wash. If you are using them as a regular water brush, You don't need to squeeze them. There's a valve system inside which will take care of all of it for you. So you don't need to end up in a wet mess. Let's get some Coloursoft Bright Pink next to it. And just put a nice even layer down. I'm just going to give that a sharpen. Okay, so if it starts to look a bit clumpy like this, just give it a little bit of a sharpen.
Judith, would you be able to explain to everyone on the workshop the difference between Coloursoft and Lightfast and why they might want to choose one over the other?
Yeah, sure. So Coloursoft is a wax-based pencil and Lightfast is an oil-based pencil. So if I tell you the qualities of Coloursoft first, Coloursoft, when you're using it, or if you're using it now, feels a lot drier. It lays down in large areas quite quickly, but it does feel a lot drier. It's a softer pencil. It's certainly, it's more fragile to use. It requires a lighter hand. It's perfect for portraits, for animals. It's got a good variety of colours, but it is a lot softer and a lot drier, and it is a wax-based pencil. If we just move to Coloursoft Pink whilst I'm talking to you. So Coloursoft Pink, so any pink, paler pink pencil, we don't have Coloursoft. Lightfast is an oil-based pencil, which is a lot creamier to lay down. It has a buttery feel to it. It is a smoother lay down, and it is a blend of oils and waxes. It mixes on the paper rather than blends. So Coloursoft blends, Lightfast mixes on the paper. With Lightfast, you can use solvents. So if you wanted to use a solvent to blend, you can. You can use it on a textured paper, and you can use it on black paper. Coloursoft, equally, you can use it on a black paper or textured paper, but you would use a blending pencil with it rather than a solvent. Coloursoft is a more of a translucent pencil, which means you can see light through it and you can see layers through it, whereas Lightfast is more of an opaque pencil. Lightfast is a brighter pencil, whereas Coloursoft is more subtle. And you'll see here, whereas you've got a very, very bright light layer, and Coloursoft is a very translucent layer. They feel very different in your hands to use. One feels very dry, one feels almost buttery. You can actually use them both together. If you were using them both together, you would use Coloursoft first and then Lightfast second. Use the drier one first and then the oilier one. Let's put a bit of metallic in this section. Again, give it a sharpen. The metallic almost feels like a combination of them both together. Each pencil feels completely different to use. Every pencil can be used with a different pencil in the range. Nothing is standalone. That's what's nice about Derwent, is I can guarantee that all my pencils work nicely together. It doesn't matter what I pick up, everything is compatible. So I can use Inktense as long as I let it dry, and I have to let the core of the paper dry. I can use any pencil over the top of that. Might be a bit of cam shake for a second. Shall I show you this? Okay, so everything plays nicely together. Nothing is a standalone product. You can use metallic pencils for highlights and for areas in your picture that you want to shine or stand out. And you can use it as a heavier layer. And they do work lovely on black paper. So you can push a little bit harder and really use the pigment in them for the contemporary colour palette. Then let's add a layer of the Coloursoft pink. Again, you must give them a sharpen. The Coloursoft especially, if you don't sharpen a softer pencil, you find they go really clumpy. But we'll add a lighter layer. We added a darker layer before. I'm just going to add a light, sketchy layer and show the difference. You can make it darker in the corner if you like. Where the corners meet. And we'll do the same with bright pink. So with your eraser, just erase the graphite line in between. If you lift off your colour pencil, 90% of it is erasable. So you can always correct your mistakes with colour pencil. That's what's nice about it. Is you can always go back in and correct any mistakes you make. Just always go back in. Excuse me, I'm sneezing. Okay, so we're going to use Coloursoft Bright Pink. And we're going to shade in this triangle next to it. Again, if I've gone too fast, don't worry, you will be able to get it on catch up. Now, when you shade lightly, you'll see that the colours seem very similar. It's when you push a little bit harder that you'll see the pigment releases, and there's actually quite a lot of red to it. Get right up to the edges. If you see any white joins, almost go over the top of them. Let's do this section in Lightfast. You can just lift off a little bit of your excess graphite. So you don't have to remove it all, you can just take the excess off. Sharpen your Lightfast, because we used it blunt last time. We didn't sharpen it last time. So give it a sharpen this time. Do it right up onto that edge. And then because I'm right-handed, I'm going on the left edge. And then shade it in. I'm going to press a little bit harder. I can do that with Lightfast as long as I keep rotating it. The reason why I'm rotating it is I'm taking the pressure off the core of the pencil to prevent it snapping. So I'm rotating it to make sure I'm getting the sharpest point of the pencil at all time, but I'm also taking the pressure off the core of the pencil to prevent it snapping. And you can see just how much pigment is released in these pencils. Combined with Lightfast paper, it really does bring out the very best in them. The Lightfast paper is the perfect partnering to these pencils. It has a smooth lay down, the colours remain really vibrant, and your Lightfast pencils are going to remain Lightfast for up to 100 years. The Lightfast paper also does the same. So it's best to combine the two together rather than counteract the Lightfast qualities that you've invested so much in your pencils with then using non-Lightfast paper. So you may have to do what I've just done and sharpen your pencil. Take it right up and just give it another layer. What you want to do is fill in any white bits. So the white bits are what I call the troughs and valley in the paper. Let me just give it that camera shake. Or the troughs and valley in the paper. Your paper is made up of hills and valleys. And it's these hills and valleys that you want the pigment of the pencils to sink into. And this is what's going to make your artwork so vibrant. If your pencils aren't sharp, the pencil skips over the hills and valleys in the paper and instead goes across the top of them. And you lack the vibrancy. So this is the reason why we keep our pencils sharp, is so the pigment sinks into the valleys of the paper. We fill the valleys of the paper with pigment, and that's what helps us and enables us to get the nice vibrancy of colour. So here we use the same pencil here, here, and here, and you can see we've got different values, we call it, and different tones. Let's get out the Coloursoft pink for me, please. Give it a sharpen. And then we're going to add in a layer of Coloursoft pink.
Judith, we're just coming up to 10 to 6.
Perfect, thank you very much. I have just almost perfect timing. I suspect we'll probably run over by about 10 minutes. Almost perfect timing, which is very good for me. Okay, so you can change the angle of your pencils so all your pencil strokes aren't going in the same way. Don't forget to rotate your pencil so you're at the sharpest point at all times. And also turn your hand. Okay, so let's get out your Inktense. We'll go for Inktense Deep Rose. Give it a sharpen. I'm going to add in a medium layer. So that was very dark, this is very light. Let's go for a mid-ground one. So not as heavy as you would normally write with, but we're not going for a tickle. Draw this edge in. Now you have to remember that Inktense is permanent. So if you do get on your clothes, it's not going to come out. So be very careful when you're using Inktense, especially in the summer months when you're using light clothing, that you don't get it on your clothing. But it does make for fantastic t-shirts, also silk scarves, anything like that. It makes fantastic gifts. You can use it on unusual objects, such as trainers and caps. There's nothing in Inktense that requires heat setting, so you are not required to iron it after. As long as you wet out all the pigment, it will be permanent. Okay, so give it a light layer and then wet it out. You'll see that I turned my hand to get this edge. You can turn your artwork I'm not turning my artwork so it doesn't become too difficult for you to follow, but at home, do turn your artwork so you can get a nice straight edge. Take it right up to the edge, don't worry if it goes over. You can trim that after when it's dry. Right, now you'd be tempted to do this section next. Don't do this section next. Let's do this one. Let's give this a layer of metallic, and it's going to be a really light layer because we want it to shimmer. Remember to give it a sharpen, and we're just going to give it a light layer. Now you have to be careful because you've coloured that in, so just shade round and tighten that edge up. Now you'll see I lent on that, so you have to be careful. And just give it a really light layer. Now if you want to give it a light layer, take your hand a little bit further up your pencil, and it stops you pressing too hard. Don't hold it right at the end, because if you hold it right at the end, you've got no control. Rest your hand on the work surface or your table and just pull back as you're shading. Just ever so gently pull back. And that will keep your pencil strokes still nice and tight together, but smooth. It gives you an anchor point. Still rotate your pencil, you don't want a flat chisel edge. But it will help you cover a large area quite quickly. You can do that with any pencil. The only pencil it doesn't work so well with is Lightfast, because Lightfast is oil-based and is thicker and creamier. There's not a powdery lay down. Get right into these corners. And our final one here is Inktense. And we're going to use Inktense Fuchsia. Give it a sharpen. And get right in. And just give it a light layer. Now what we can do is we can make this section slightly different. We can give it a very light layer all over.
Judith, what are the benefits of having a paper that's not bleached, like our Lightfast and Inktense papers?
If you have a paper that's bleached, what's going to happen is your artwork is going to fade over time. Because if you think of what bleach does to your clothing or what bleach does to your materials, is not only does it fade things, but it also changes the colour. So recently I bleached one of my pairs of my favourite trousers. And when I looked at it, it changed everything to pink spots. So that what will actually do to your artwork is it will actually change the colour, but it can fade it as well. So that's what it's going to do to your artwork. And when you've invested a lot of time, a lot of effort and a lot of care and love into your artwork, the last thing that you want it to happen is for it to change colour or for it to fade, especially when it's for somebody that you care about or has asked you to draw a painting or a drawing of something that they care about. You don't want it to fade. The other thing is you will find that if you draw for a long period of time, you may actually find the skin on the side of your hand becomes sore. And what that is it's the bleach or the buffering agents in the paper is actually starting to cause a little bit of discomfort in your skin. So we don't use any bleaching agents in either of these papers. We don't use any artificial whitening or what we call OBAs, optical brightening agents. It does mean that the paper appears slightly off-white. We call it more of a natural white colour, but it's nicer to work with. So I paused there while I was just working out where I was going. it's actually nicer to work with because it's a more natural white to work with. If you look around you and you look at white objects in nature, they are not bleached white. They are softer white. It's only when you go out to the garden and you see a really, really true white flower that you see the bright white. What is nice about this paper is you can actually create white objects on it, such as bright white flowers, by utilising the white pencils in the range. So it also has its benefits as that. But certainly it protects your artwork from fading, it protects it from being bleached out or the colours changing. Okay, so that's our last section. I did it slightly different. So I've darkened, if you look, by cross-hatching. So you remember cross-hatching from your school days, hopefully. So cross-hatching is shade one way, and then we're going to counter shade the opposite way. And I left the middle free of the cross-hatching shading. Now the other thing is, if your water brush doesn't flow and you feel as though, stop the shake, you feel as though it's got a little bit gummed up and it's not flowing, squeeze it a little bit to the palm of your hand. What it is the wax in water-based pencils can sometimes just clog up the fibres. It's nothing major in the brush, it's just sometimes it stops flowing as well as it could. The other thing you can do is just run it under a tap for a split second. Now you'll see on the image of the workshop, there was a little label, and in your pack, if you've purchased the pack, there is a gold pen. What you can do, and what I did for my workshop, is once it's dry, colour yourself a rectangle, and you can simply write across the front of it, either with love or your recipient's name in gold pen, and pop it onto the front of your card. You need to do it when your card is completely dry. You need to give it a couple of hours dry time. And equally, don't cut your card out instantly. You need to give it a couple of hours dry time. Watercolour paper surprisingly holds the pencil for the water for a long period of time. By keeping your paper entire without cutting it for a couple of hours, what it does is it helps give it structure. You'll see that when you look at yours, it won't be lying flat. Wait until it's completely dry, till it's completely lying flat, then cut it out. Fold it back on itself. If you have some blue tack or some poster putty, what I suggest you do is put some on the inside of your heart, stick it together, then cut round it. Because that way it holds these two sections together and it's easier to cut. But don't cut it for at least an hour. Give it I would imagine about 2 hours, just to make sure the core of your watercolour paper is completely dry. Now, we've come to the end of our workshop. What I would really love it if you could do is, if you could, when you've finished creating your Valentine's cards, if you could tag any artwork that you put onto social media, if you could tag it with #CultPensCreative. There is an Instagram channel, a Facebook channel, Twitter, and of course there's Pinterest as well. I mean, there's absolutely everywhere that you can share your artwork. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. It's been great and I love creating alongside you. I'm going to pass you back to Claire now. I hope you've enjoyed yourself and it's been great spending some time with you. Happy Valentine's Day.
Oh, thank you, Judith. That was amazing. I've really enjoyed myself. I'm not going to show my creation because it's not quite as beautiful as yours. I've got a bit of work to do, I think. But I'm also feeling utterly relaxed. So I hope everyone else has enjoyed it as much as I have. Thank you very much. We will be sending a short little survey, just some quick questions to get your feedback, as this is our first workshop, so it's very exciting for us, and we hope it will be the first of many to come. So we'd love your suggestions on topics and themes that you would like us to do. Judith's already done my bit, so we'd love to see your creations. Share with us on the hashtag CultPensCreative on social media, email to us if that's easier. We'd love to see all your creativity, and thanks again to Judith, and we hope to see you all again soon. Thank you very much. Bye for now.